We will begin with propositions 30 and 38. 30 is the temporary taxes to fund education, and 38 is the tax to fund education and early childhood programs. Ann.
With the debates going on and the game, I'm surprised there's anybody in the audience. Proposition 30, sometimes called the Governor Brown tax plan. The question is, should the California Constitution be amended to temporarily raise taxes, sales taxes, and personal income taxes? Is this too loud? Oh, okay. A little bit? Okay. And personal income taxes, guarantee certain revenue transfers, and eliminate funding for certain mandates for the state government related to the Brown Act. Now, the first thing that I think I'll do is just speak for a minute to this, the removal of the money for the mandates. Back in the 1970s, the Fair Practices Act was passed about 1972 that mandated open meetings for local governments. In other words, people in the community needed to know when the meetings were. There could not be any private meetings without them being on in public view. A whole series of things to try to clean up government were passed. And at the time, the state gave the localities and municipalities money to carry out these activities. In other words, publish the meeting times and a whole series of things that they did to help the public become aware and participate in government. That money, for some reason, seems to be eliminated from this budget or this proposition. So if you vote for Prop 30, that little item will be eliminated from the budget. Something we're not crazy about, but it's there. Okay, let's look at why this tax increase is needed. First of all, California receives its revenue from corporate taxes, personal income taxes, and sales taxes. Over the last decade, the state revenues have decreased dramatically, causing legislators to borrow and cut almost $20 billion from the school budgets in the last 4 years alone. In order to balance the 2012-2013 budget, Governor Brown has counted on the expected $6 billion from this measure to pass the budget. It's in the budget right now. And should the Proposition 30 not pass, that amount will be triggered and cut right out of the budget that is now having been developed for the next 2 years, for the next year. So schools and universities will take the major brunt of this shortfall. In addition, the state transferred the responsibility for incarcerating certain prisoners to local jurisdictions in 2011. A number of programs associated with that population are also sent to the local communities. In this proposal, sales taxes would be increased by 1/4 cent or 1 cent for every $4 for 4 years. It's a temporary rise. Now, personal income taxes would increase on single income earners making more than $250,000 per year, and gradually increase to those making over $1 million, who would then pay about 12.3% of their salary or their earnings to the state in taxes. Roughly $6 billion in taxes would be raised, although it could fluctuate, because one of the things that we know about personal income taxes is that they fluctuate a lot, because people with high incomes usually have variations depending on when they take their capital gains, and they sell a lot of stocks and bonds, and that fluctuates a bit. But that $6 billion is what the measure is expected to raise. Now, if you want to know exactly how much you will pay if you earn over $600,000 a year, turn to page 13 in your voter guide, your official voter guide, and you will see a schedule showing you all the rates of taxes that will be incurred depending on what your income is. So the official voter guide will give you a lot of that detailed information, telling you that if you make $400,000, it'll be this and so forth. But the thing to remember about this Proposition 30 is that there are no taxes levied on anybody who makes less than $250,000. Now, how will the money be used? The measure calls for the money to be given to the school districts and to public safety. Several years ago, the courts ruled that the state of California had overcrowded prisons and needed to reduce this population. The legislature passed the Prison Realignment Act, which calls for the transfer of thousands of low-level offenders to be transferred to county jails throughout the state. The state will also send to the districts $6 billion to cover the cost of maintaining these prisoners and some programs associated with this population, such as drug abuse, parole supervision, and violence prevention. So, because of the overcrowding and because of the court judgment about the state prisons, the local communities, the local county jails and so forth are now taking up populations along with a whole series of rehabilitation efforts. And some of the locales are building new prisons, like in Stanislaus County, and some places like San Francisco are developing rehabilitation programs with halfway houses and with prisoner re-entry programs. So the money is sent to the communities to help them with these numerous prisoners who are considered low-level offenders. The share of school funds will be directed to the school governing boards, who will determine how the monies are to be used. 11% of the total revenue allocated to the schools will go to the community colleges, and the remainder, about 80-something%, will go to the K through 12 schools. Audits and oversight will be in place for both of these revenue streams, with the expectation that none of this money will be directed to administration. Now, what percentage of the $6 billion goes to the school versus public safety? And it's not spelled out in the literature. I read through the text and this booklet several times, trying to find out where the money, how much money was going where. And fundamentally, we're going to have to assume that that the monies will be divided, since Proposition 98 guaranteed a floor for the school that has been historically around 50%. We're going to have to probably assume that 50% of that $6 billion will go to the schools, somewhere in that area. The other 50% will go to the realignment programs and some of the other programs that are outlined in this booklet. They have primarily to do with prisoners and with public safety. Now, what do the proponents say? Well, they say that this is a real solution to the problems of underfunded schools and safety programs. The taxes fall primarily on those who have made significant incomes over the last decade and spare lower income populations. They also say that California needs to continue to provide a skilled workforce for its competitive edge, and a first-rate school and university system is critical for the future of our state. Now, if you want to read more arguments, turn to page 18 in this voter guide, which has almost a whole page of various arguments in favor of it, but those seem to be about the general ones. The supporters are the League of Women Voters of California, Editorial boards of our two newspapers, both the Oakland Tribune and the San Francisco Chronicle, support Proposition 30. President of the California Teachers Association and various teacher organizations. Now, what do the opponents say? Well, they say it doesn't guarantee any money to the schools, nor does it reform failing schools. The money will be used to backfill teachers' pensions, and spending is out of control and needs to be fixed first before any more money goes to the schools. So you may read more arguments against this proposition on page 19 in the voter, a whole page of them, as a matter of fact. The opponents are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the president of the Sacramento Taxpayers Association, National Federation of Independent Businesses and Small Businesses of California, various individuals who identify themselves as board members, school board members. I won't give you their names, but they are in this booklet again. So, this is a proposition then that will raise $6 billion, will tax mostly high earners, is temporary, and will spend the money on two important areas, schools and public safety.